What an honor and a joy it is to be here. There's no place I'd rather be than in this room at this magnificent event. I can't imagine anything more important than this gathering. I can't imagine a more life-giving collection of human energy and social creativity and love in action. And we don't take for granted being able to be together like this anymore, sitting so close together, seeing each other's faces. At the same time, we are still so far from fully metabolizing what we all went through in 2020, and beginning with the pandemic and all the things that it has called us to and is calling us to still. And of all the callings and reckonings that began to unfold in that time, I never forget, I am so happy to name in this room, that the first was this. As the ground shook beneath all of our feet, we were collectively drawn to ask, how astonishing is this? As a nation, as communities, as civilization, we were drawn to ask, what is essential and what is non-essential? And almost every answer that came back to that question of what is essential had to do with the giving of care. And I had interviewed iGen just weeks before, those days in March here in this country, when the reality of what was before us came clear. The world had shifted on its axis, and everything she had known and put her creativity and energy and intelligence and love to making possible in the world, and everything that everyone in this room also knows and embodies and empowers, what she said to me weeks before had never been more relevant or urgent before. And yet, at the same time, we as a society have also been given, then and now, to see that this work you do is literally life-giving, and it is not what we have most richly rewarded in our life together. Mm-hmm. That must change. It is time. It is past time. So I love the title that was given to this panel this morning, The Genius of Care. My lens on everything is what is happening with the human condition? What does it mean to be human? How do we want to live? And who will we be to each other? Those questions belong together. And this work represents the highest we are capable of as human beings, our highest humanity. So how do we make this human genius more visible and more valued? How do we make sure that the brilliance of our caregivers and caregiving relationships are understood and supported? That's what we're going to talk about this morning. We have a few minutes to do it, but I have an incredible 4 people with me. I'm going to introduce them briefly, and then we'll get into this. Aisha Adkins is an advocate, storyteller, and caregiver based in Atlanta, Georgia, and is a constituency engagement manager at Caring Across. She's also the co-executive director of the millennial caregiver nonprofit Love Labor Project. So. And our next panelist is originally from Nairobi, Kenya, an advocate for mental health and a passionate activist, sorry, I'm tongue-tied this morning, a passionate activist for Black immigrant domestic workers. Please welcome professional nanny and house manager, Bonnie Okoth. Maria Town is the president and CEO of the American Association of People with Disabilities. She has held roles with the City of Houston and is the former senior associate director in the Obama White House Office of Public Engagement. She's also the creator, yeah, there's more, of the popular CP Shoes blog, where she writes about fashion, design, and disability. And last but not least, we have Yvette Nicole Brown. Emmy-nominated actress, writer, producer, and host. She has delighted you on screens big and small. She sits on the national boards of Donors Choose, where she's vice chair, Emily's List, MPTF, Next Gen, and SAG-AFTRA. So I just want to start with this beautiful phrase, the genius of care. And I know that caregiving, perhaps because it is so elemental to who we are as human beings, can be defined as unskilled, something that is just natural. And yet, the demands of caregiving, whether that is vocational or because of the circumstances of a life, are complex and sacred and strenuous. And so I wonder if each of you would just say a little bit about how you came to this giving of care in your life, and what comes to mind for you, what comes to heart for you when you hear that phrase, the genius of care. What is that genius? How does that genius manifest itself? Want to start, Aisha?
Sure. So I became a caregiver shortly after my mother was diagnosed with frontotemporal degeneration back in 2013. In order to maintain healthcare benefits, my father needed to continue working full-time. So it made the most sense for me to leave my position in healthcare and stay home with my mother in order to keep her safe and to begin assisting her with her activities of daily living. And I really did not realize at the time that it would be a long-term commitment. I ended up caring for her for a decade before she passed this July. And what the genius of care means to me is really the orchestration and the cultivation of another life, of another human. And that's something that, as you mentioned, is often viewed as unskilled, but it's the most demanding of one's full self if it is to be done in a way that provides dignity, in a way that uplifts one's quality of life. And that, to me, is the genius of care.
Thank you.
Okay, I was plunged into caregiving about 3 years ago. I am a victim of human trafficking. So as I was trying to get a means of how to just get by and make a decent living, I got into nanny work. And being an immigrant and at the same time looking for work, I did not know where to start and all, but getting into the nanny world, I found a sense of belonging. When we say genius of care, it's bringing in your intellect, bringing in your passion, bringing in all that you can to give somebody else the care that they would otherwise not be able to have. I come into this space just with a lot of empathy. You have to be dependable. You need to know what you're doing and basically make sure that the person you're giving the care to is able to have and live a quality of life.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be here today without care. When I was a child, I received home and community-based services that were paid for by a state Medicaid waiver. And that waiver and the support that I received from it allowed my mom, a single mom of 3 children with disabilities, to go back to school to become a nurse so that she could have a career to support her family. Shortly before my mom finished nursing school, a judge said that I was no longer disabled enough to continue receiving that care. So I lost all of my services. And I remember going before the judge and like walking in front of him to show that I needed support and I still wasn't disabled enough. And that was one of the first moments when I remember feeling that this was wrong, right? And that the system that was supposed to help people was actually harming people, and not just me, my whole family. And now I have this, career in advocacy that stems from repeated moments like that. Fast forward, and I am my father's primary caregiver. He recently experienced liver failure and received a miraculous transplant. And I managed all of his care every day, getting him out of bed, getting him dressed, all of it. And I think most people, when they see me, they assume that I need support. And they are correct. And that is not a bad thing, right? That is actually a very good thing. What they don't assume is that I can also provide, and do provide, a lot of support for so many people. And so for me, the genius of care is a genius that doesn't judge who is and who is not worthy of care.
Yeah.
And it also doesn't judge what kinds of care people can receive. So maybe it's support getting dressed. Maybe it's support calling all of these bureaucrats that you have to navigate. Maybe it's a job coach so you can have a job in the community. But to me, that's the genius of care.
Hey, everybody. I, like Aisha, have been a caregiver for 10 years. My dad has dementia, and I'm his full-time caregiver. And then my mom helped me, and she passed 2 years ago. So now it's me. For me, the genius of care is aspirational, because things like this, CareFest, are an opportunity for us to find out ways to do this better, how to be better advocates for what we need, how to find a way to let people know that this is a silent thing that we do for the most part. There's not enough support. And so moments like this are a way to let people know we need people to understand what this is, and we help them understand it by coming and speaking and being here and sharing. So the genius for me is hopefully down the road, the government and everyone else will understand, what it takes for us to do what we do, what it takes for you guys to do what you do, and they'll provide more support, as Maria says.
Yvette, I was reading something that the organizers gave me. I guess they'd done an interview with you or something. Anyway, there was this really striking statement in there that I feel gets to genius, also in a way that all of you have talked about it. You said something like, caring for your dad, like every day is an adventure.
Absolutely.
And I mean, that's also the never knowing what will happen next, and having to be skilled with all of those pivots and unknowns and new turns.
And also understanding that it's okay if it's a weird day. You know what I'm saying? Like with dementia, the beautiful thing about me and my dad is we both have great senses of humor. So in his early dementia, he would say, Yvette, have I told you? I go, yes. Whatever it is, yes. And he would just laugh because he would be delighted by it too. We understand that this is a weird circumstance that we're in. This is not the norm. And he's at the point now where I'm helping him take his showers and get his clothes on. And I said, look, man, listen, this ain't great for me either. But here we are. Here we are. And we laugh about it and we move on. And so you have to continue to have your sense of humor and realize that the other thing that I say about my dad is because he has dementia, I'm the caretaker of his memories. So when he wants to hear about his life, it is my delight to go, Dad, let me tell you about when you were 10 in Alabama. And I know it because he's told me the story 20 times. And I can now tell it back to him. And so you find a way to make the adventure fun because we're in it. We're 10 years in now. And I'm enjoying my time with him, and this is precious to me. And having lost my mother, this time is precious. So instead of going in like, I gotta go no, I'm like, let's see what Daddy's doing today. Let's see who Daddy is today. And just celebrate it. Yeah.
So I think taking something seriously and honoring it also means that we really take on its full complexity, the full drama of this. And so I'd love to spend a little bit of time, and we've already kind of waded into this, talking about tensions and challenges with caregiving that you would like for us to be speaking about more in our life together, that you would like people in the larger society to understand. Happy for anybody to start.
This really hits home to me. First of all, being an immigrant, not knowing my rights, discrimination. We face this a lot, yeah? Second thing is wage theft. A lot of us are underpaid and overworked. Yeah. When you're in a situation that you need to work and your employer knows that you don't have probably legal status, they take advantage. And here you are, you really need the job, but you have no other means except to take this low wage. Yet we are doing the work that is really, really, really vital for everybody else to survive. Yeah? And then there's also the backlash of retaliation. If I do report that I am being underpaid, what will happen to me? Yeah. What's going to happen? Where am I going to get my next meal? As a caregiver too, you have no room to take breaks because nobody's paying you when you're sick.
Right.
Nobody cares that you are not mentally in the right state. Right. And you yourself know that you really need this job to be able to pay your bills.
Right.
Imagine being a caregiver and not being able to pay your own bills. Who's taking care of your bills? Who's taking care of your mental health? And I'm listening to Aisha and Yvette talk about, and you talk about taking care of your dad. Who's giving you the break? Who takes that break for you? Right. You need to be in the right frame of mind to be able to take care of somebody else.
Right.
So those are just but a few of the tensions and retaliations. And then there's a lot of discomfort. As you said, you have to, right now, taking care of even helping him bathe. That's your father. In the African culture, we can't do that. Yet we have to do that.
Right.
So there's a lot that goes on being a caregiver. And then we are not recognized. I come from a background of my background was operations and logistics. So I bring in my knowledge into this. Yet nobody feels that this is a skilled enough job to give you the proper remunerations.
Right.
And then at the end of the day, I see people in my field older than me still working because they do not have any benefits. They did not get any retirement benefits to take care of themselves later.
Yes.
So people older than me are still working. They should be at home relaxing, enjoying the benefits. But unfortunately, because nobody is caring, nobody wants to know, we're stuck in the same situation. And the other thing is the young people don't want to get into the field knowing that I don't want to be at that age still taking care, still working, So I'm going to look for something else. So our industry is also very, very, we are overwhelmed. So the little of us who are in the system are so overworked and yet so underpaid.
Yes. And I'd like to just, yes. And piggybacking off of what you've said, Bonnie, watching someone that you care about, that you're in relationship with, encounter severe illness, transform through disability, if that's something that is a new experience for them, can have a tremendous impact on one's mental health. However, because our healthcare system is tied to employment, if you have removed yourself from the workforce in order to provide care for someone in your home, in your community, you likely do not have access to health care benefits. If you do, that does not include mental health care benefits, right? And so you're experiencing all of this transition, all of this kind of upheaval, right? And you're unable to access the supports that you need in order to maintain your stability, your mental health. Those are the things that are so vital, but that are out of reach for so many family and community and informal caregivers. And in addition to that, there was something you said, Bonnie, about the fact that, you know, you were severely underpaid and overworked. And there's this phrase that you often hear in the media that there's a direct worker shortage. No, there are plenty of jobs available. The problem is that those jobs do not give access to benefits, do not give access to health care. There's no career path. There's no opportunity for advancement, right? And so the shortage is of the jobs themselves being good jobs that people aspire toward, that are, you know, but children are little, they can say, I want to grow up, I want to be someone's caregiver. I want to improve their lives. I want to make them better. That's not happening right now. But we can do so much to change that.
Either of you? Yeah.
So it's taken a long time for me to talk about care, and it's taken a long time for my organization to really get engaged in using the word care in our advocacy. And that is because historically and today, the guise of care is used to oppress and harm people with disabilities. I'll give you a couple of examples. You're vulnerable. We want to keep you safe. We're putting you in an institution. We want to care for you, right?
Right.
We don't think you can work in the community. So you have to go, we want to care for you. You have to go work in this sheltered workshop where you earn pennies an hour. Parents forcibly sterilize their children with disabilities so that they're easier to care for.
Wow.
Right? And so it's hard for me to reconcile all of that with the truth that all of you are telling on this stage. And I think what we have to do as a community of people and as a movement is say that strategies, policies, programs, actions that separate people from the families and communities they love, that deprive them of their agency, and that reduce their overall quality of life are not care.
Yeah.
Right? Woo! So if you see that happening, whether it's in your family or your neighborhood or in your state, push back and don't let them use our movement to justify harm to other people.
I have nothing to add to this question because she said it.
So, you know, there's a lot to despair about. There's a lot that is, I mean, to say that it's not good enough is such an understatement, right? I also, as I've always experienced in iGen, experience in you, just this fierce hope and determination that it can be made better. So I think, you know, one of the kind of questions for this starting panel this morning is meant to be, you know, what is the path forward towards elevating care to its proper place? And nobody, you know, there's not, the yellow brick road is not built, right? But I'm curious what each of you see from where you sit, from where you work. What is giving you hope about that possibility, about that path towards elevating care in a more meaningful way?
I want to piggyback on what Maria said, the idea of to show care, we have to hide you away, right? We have to tuck you away somewhere, because I think part of it is they don't think that society wants to see, right? So I think a way to shift that is to show more what caregiving is, what caregivees are, what they look like, what they need. So I think my industry in particular could be very helpful in that. If we saw more depictions of caregiving on television and film, it would let people know, first of all, it would demystify what it is, right? Because when Aisha and I say we've been caring for someone for 10 years, I can imagine when we say that, the idea, like 10 years, right? But if it's 10 years of joy, Or it's 10 years of love.
Yep.
You know, a lot of people here have kids. You've raised them for 18 years. It's 18 years of,
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So you demystify it, because for some reason when it's a caregiver, caregivee situation, it feels like drudgery.
Right.
And it's like raising how you feel when you care for your kids. It's the same thing. But maybe it's because we don't see it.
Yeah.
So if there were more television shows showing it, more movies that show it, the good, the bad, the love, then people will step into it. Because I hear people all the time, and I don't know if you guys have experienced this, oh, I don't know if I could do that.
Yes. Yes.
You can't love?
Yes.
You can't give somebody a meal?
Yep.
Or take a walk with somebody? You don't
Yep.
have it in you? You could do it. But maybe they just need to see it to know that they can do it. So I think that's what gives me hope, and I hope that the more we talk about it and the more opportunities with Caring Across Generations and other things that we're doing, we'll get to let people know and tell the entertainment industry how to show it more.
Yeah. I agree. I think in addition to destigmatizing the world of care, the way that we view illness, the way that we view disability, right? In addition to that, policy change is key. Part of why people kind of are so fearful is that there's this kind of sense of being held hostage by a situation over which you have no control. Whether you are the person receiving care, the person giving care, the lack of control that you have in this situation, given the current state of home and community-based resources and the policies. You know, you mentioned, Maria, the Medicaid waiver, and there's stigma involved with that, right? We hear the word Medicaid and it's needs-based, and there's just this world in which we live that just continually places folks in a place of self-shame, right? But the thing is that if you have access to everything that you need to live your best life, those barriers begin to disappear, right? And making sure that, you know, that folks have homes that they can modify, right? That they have the wheelchair access, making sure that they do have respite available, making sure that folks can feel that sense of dignity and that sense of self-pride. That can be we can equip folks with that through policy change, but we have to make sure that we are doing things like voting. We have to make sure that we are electing officials who are, who are really on the side of care and want to see people succeed and live their best lives. And so it's important to make sure that you're educating yourself about the issues, that you are, partnering with organizations like Caring Across and learning all that you need to learn about your elected officials and what they have on their agendas around care.
I would like to add on to what everybody has said. When I first began, I did not know anything about my rights. I did not know what is expected of me, and I was basically clueless. But when I got into National Domestic Workers Alliance, I knew that I had rights. I knew that I should be earning a certain amount, and for what reason. I knew that if I'm employed as a nanny, I'm a nanny, not a housekeeper.
That's right.
So for me, knowledge is very essential. If I'm able to understand what my role is and what I need to do, and I'm able to impact others who do not know, because coming from a background that I had never been in this space before, I did not know. But the fact that I gained knowledge and I know better now. Where I was 3 years ago is very different from where I am right now. So the first thing is let people know what they're capable, what they should be, what they should expect, and where they're going, and why this work is considered, why are we considering this work unskilled? We are just as professional as every other work that people do, yeah? So we need to be treated as such, right? But there are people who do not know this. So in having such kind of spaces and being with people around here shows me that we are going places, telling our stories. The greatest person, the most powerful person is the storyteller. I've lived it, I've seen it, and I know what to do. And now I'm giving this knowledge that I've learned and shared with other people as well. Coming from now, and this you start from the grassroots, the base building, letting everybody my story is different from their story, but we are looking at the same goal. We are fighting for the same thing, you know? And then once we come together, because unity is power, the next thing we need to do is go to the lawmakers, as she's saying, the people who make the laws. Look for those who are aligned to what our values and what our mission, basically.
Amen.
And keeping on sensitizing. We keep on knocking on their doors. We let them know. How can people at this day and age be earning a minimum of $7 an hour? How are we supposed to survive? If you're earning that minimum wage, meaning I have to leave this job and go to another job.
Right.
So that I can just make ends meet. And when I'm sick, I have to think twice. Do I need to go to work, or who's going to pay my bill?
Right.
You know? But if I'm compensated for not going to work, if I'm compensated when I'm on leave, then I have nothing to fear about. And remember, if you're not in the right frame of mind, you're not able to give the proper care to the person you're caring for.
That's right.
Yeah? So these are the things I'm looking for. And I can see that from where I started and where we are today, there is change. But we need to keep on pushing. We will not stop pushing, because we have a large majority. We are the backbone of everything that goes on in this house. Without caregivers, we have nothing to do.
Maria, what do you see?
Something that gives me hope is the Care Can't Wait Coalition. Historically, you know, when I first met Ajin, it was when I was at the Department of Labor, and it was on this home care rule, and the disability community was on one side and the labor community was on the other. And it was terrible. Today and recently, during our fight for Build Back Better, you had the disability community, labor advocates, paid leave advocates, gender advocates, all coming together to fight for pillars of the care economy: paid family leave, child care, home and community-based services. And we would not let policymakers say, oh, well, you can get some money for child care, but not paid leave, right? We would not sacrifice one for another. And what that resulted in was a president of the United States committing $400 billion towards care in his budget request to Congress, which is completely unprecedented. And really, like, any cheer that comes should be for all of you, because we all did that together. And although we did not win that particular fight, we got so close.
Close.
We lost by what, 1 or 2 votes?
Yes.
And the coalition didn't fall apart, right? We're still in it. We're still in it to win it, and we continue to support one another and continue building this organizing infrastructure that can maintain all of our efforts for what I hope is years to come. So.
You know, Aisha, I'm curious about the Love Labor Project, which is a millennial caregiver nonprofit. Is that right? I'm just curious, just continuing on here, is there a generational shift at all in this?
I think there is a generational shift. What I will say about generations is that in many communities, in Black and brown communities, in immigrant communities, in queer communities, care is often something that is performed generation after generation after generation, which also means that as much as that love can be handed down and passed down, so too can some of the challenges that come with care, right? Which means that it becomes cyclical, because you know, caregivers often experience, in addition to poor mental health, poor physical health outcomes. And so, you know, really, and again, many millennials have had to leave the workforce. And so it's really about creating a sense of support, a sense of community around the care experience, and also imagining for oneself what you want your future to be, what you want your own aging experience or disability experience, should you encounter that, to look like, and making sure that you are tapping into resources, that you're having these conversations earlier rather than later. I think so many times we have conversations about what we want our end of life care to look like when we've reached near the end of our lives, right? Rather than thinking when we're in our 20s, when we're in our 30s, when, you know, before there's some kind of accident or, you know, some sort of incident that takes place, we aren't giving consideration to these things. But with the Love Labor Project and other organizations that are really beginning to blossom, we are having these conversations. We are opening these discussions earlier and earlier, and I think that is vital. And again, as Bonnie said, being a storyteller, you don't have to be on a stage like this to tell your story, right?
Right.
You can be in conversation with family members, with friends, with strangers at the coffee shop, but continue to talk about it. Continue to talk about it, and that's another way we can remove stigma from everything that we're experiencing, and we can empower one another. And that's really the goal.
I wonder if any of you think that the stigma is if there's a generational difference in some of these stigmas, because I kind of feel that there might be, but I don't know that I can say that. Yes?
I would say so. I would say that, you know, millennials, Generation Z for sure, are really more open to being vulnerable, to having discussions about mental wellness, to naming their needs, to naming when...
And that they have needs, that we
Yes.
have needs,
Yeah.
right? I was born in a generation where that was not acknowledged to be reality.
100%,
Yeah.
100%. But I think there really is a cultural shift. There is a narrative shift happening that is going to benefit future generations around care of all kinds, for those receiving and giving, or, you know, all of the above.
We just have a couple minutes left, but, you know, obviously there needs to be, as we start out, there needs to be reward for this work, this human action, and it needs to be tangible, and it needs to be legal, and it needs to be in terms of respect and financial and all of this. But an irony, I think, of the genius of this not being seen is that there is all kinds of human reward, right? So we talked about challenges and tensions. The word joy has been mentioned more than once. The word love has been mentioned more than once. Just maybe briefly, like, just name the rewards, the human rewards, you know, that come with this vocation, which can be a professional vocation, and I think is a human vocation, right?
I'll go. I think for me it's the joy, that's my word, of being able to give back to my dad and to my mother. I cared for my mom too. She didn't need the kind of care my dad needed, but, you know, they taught me how to use a spoon. So I feel like I kind of owe them something. So it's kind of my way of giving back. And again, like I said, in people knowing that I'm a caregiver this long, I've been able to talk to a lot of people about it. And so I feel like that's another way to kind of pay a little tithe forward, so that maybe someone, when the time comes, because this is the thing, guys, you're either going to be a caregiver or need care.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or both.
Or both.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Maria's doing both. So this is life. We're going to age. We're going to have accidents. Things are going to happen to our bodies. This is what it is. So make your peace with it now. Right. And find your way towards it now, and talk to your loved ones about what you want, if it's your turn, when it's your turn, and what they want when it's their turn. So it's not such a big boulder, this big thing that's rolling towards us. You can knock it down to some pebbles by the time it gets to you. You know?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Other thoughts on rewards?
So for me, with my dad, I was talking to him about something work-related, and he goes, well, Maria, I guess I'm disabled too. And I said, yeah, Dad, you are.
Yep.
And it was interesting, and has been interesting to be in this caregiver role, because everything I've spent my whole life doing in, like, physical therapy, right, or like learning how to bend appropriately so I can get dressed or how to get up from bed, I've taught my dad. And in the disability community, we have a concept called a disability doula, which is somebody who helps you kind of learn the ropes. And if you've got a new body or are getting reacquainted with your mind, you can understand that your life is still worth living.
Yeah.
And getting to be a disability doula for my dad was truly an honor.
I will talk about this one incident where I was taking care of an elderly lady. She was almost 80 years old, but she was a veteran, and she was very knowledgeable. And when she heard that I was from Kenya, Africa, she really loved to have a conversation with me. And I remember I was away for like about 3 or 4 days, and then I went back. And immediately she heard my voice, she called my name. And when I walked into the room, the joy, the light, her face lit up, you know? And for me, that was so rewarding. That here she was immobile, she couldn't move, she couldn't do anything, but she could talk.
Yeah.
And she loved to talk. And the feeling that I got that I was able to just put a smile on her face, and she forgets about everything else, and she realized that, you know, she held on to my hand and for the longest, and it was such a beautiful feeling. I wished I could give her more, I wished I could do more, but just the sense that I was there, her face lit up, and she spoke forever. But the joy that I'm able to give somebody a quality of life that they otherwise would not be able to have is so rewarding.
I just, thank you. It's time for this to end and more adventures to begin. I kept thinking of this phrase of Einstein, actually, when I was getting ready to be here, who once said that there's such a thing as spiritual genius, and that spiritual genius is as necessary, more necessary to the dignity, security, and joy of humanity than objective knowledge. And he defines spiritual genius as geniuses in the art of living. And I feel like we have 4 geniuses in the art of living up here and in this room. And I just want to thank you all so much.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.